chubby e-bikes, chubby bike computers, and some slimmed down race teams. We've got all that and more in this week's episode of the Weekly Rewind, where we take a look back at the hottest news stories coming out of the cycling industry from the previous week. We've got a lot of stuff to cover today, so we're gonna jump straight into things with our first of 4 new products, and that is the Commencal Meta Power SX 400. The bike, which features an aluminum frame and 170 millimeters of travel front and back, shares nearly identical geometry to the analog bike it shares its name with. Speaking of comparisons, now it seems like just as good a time as any other to tell you a little bit more about our website, 99spokes.com, where you can go ahead and compare thousands of your favorite bikes side by side, as well as use our proprietary tools to help you sift through all the numbers and technical jargon. Anyway though, back to the bike, and the latest Meta Power features Commencal's new suspension platform, VCS, which Commencal has been using on their analog bikes for a little while now, but this is the first time it's shown up on an e-bike. Powering the bike is Bosch's 55 Nm Performance Line SX motor paired to a 400 Wh battery. These battery and motor numbers land it squarely in the SL or lightweight E-MTB category, but the 49.3 pound or 22.4 kilogram weight says otherwise. The new Meta Power is available in just 2 models right now, the first of which being the $5,500 Essential build and gets Fox performance level suspension, a mechanical SRAM GX drivetrain, and TRP DHR Evo brakes. For $7,400, you can get the Signature model, which sees upgrades all around, including Fox factory suspension, a GX and XOT type drivetrain, and Maven Silver brakes. Another important thing to highlight is that the frame does come with Commencal's lifetime warranty, further adding to the value. My first impression of the new Commencal Meta Power was that boy does it look good. My second impression was boy is it heavy. Reminds me actually a little bit of YT's latest Decoy SN, which also used a smaller motor and battery, but instead of stripping the bike back to try to hit the sub 20 kilogram weight expected of most SL bikes, prioritized ride feel and durability. And while I don't think either of these are going to be quite as popular, at least in the mainstream market, as something like the Specialized Kenevo SL or Canyon Spectral ONfly, I do still think there's a place for them out there. Maybe we can think of it as a pedal assist version of, say, a free ride or bike park bike, as opposed to a more typical enduro option. Let me know what you think in the comments. Speaking of things that I like but will probably never own, now is a great time to move on to our second new product that was released last week, which are some titanium bits and bobs from Gravity Components. These 3D printed beauties are made in Germany, and there are currently 4 available products for those looking to add a little bling to your favorite bike. In my opinion, the most unique of these is the eject button, which is essentially a dropper post remote button. Instead of a typical lever, it's actually a button that you just press. This works by hiding a small pivot arm behind the button that pulls the cable when the button is pressed. Also available are a more traditional lever style dropper remote, a chain guide, and my personal favorite, some Shimano compatible brake levers. So will they make you any faster? No. Will they piss off your significant other when they see the bank statement? Probably. But do I still want them? Definitely. I think it's probably about time that we cleanse our palates with something a little bit more practical. For that, let's bring up the Wahoo Elemnt Ace bike computer. Listing for $599, this is Wahoo's most expensive, largest, and most feature-packed device to date, measuring 5 inches from tip to tail and weighing a hefty 7.4 ounces or 210 grams. So what have they been able to pack in that portly package? Well, in addition to all the functionality you typically expect from a higher-end bike computer, it also has the largest touchscreen of any such device on the market, a speaker for turn-by-turn navigation, and get this, a wind sensor. This works by measuring your wind speed relative to your ground speed, and then analyzing that to let you know on which parts of your ride you are in one of 5 Wahoo wind dynamic zones. Lastly, it's worth noting that given this thing's size, it won't be compatible with some integrated or third-party computer mounts, so double check that before ordering. There's no denying that Wahoo is definitely upping the ante of cycling computer technology with the new Elemnt Ace, and I'm sure it's going to be a favorite amongst a lot of tech-oriented cyclists. Me, however, I can't help but think that having a full-color display the size of a smartphone is just a bit much, and I'd rather stick to a smaller bike-mounted device with my phone as a backup. But maybe I'm just being a retro grouch again. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The fourth and final product that we saw come out last week that we think is worth telling you about in this video is the Scott Patron eRIDE. And this thick boy is powered by Bosch's 85 Nm Performance Line CX motor and massive 800 Wh battery. It also gets 29-inch wheels front and back, 150 millimeters of travel, some pretty conservative geometry, highlighted by a 65.8-degree head tube angle in its slackest setting. But of course, being a Scott, the real thing to talk about here is all the integrated tech that they've built into the bike. For starters, the shock is hidden, or mostly hidden if it's equipped with a piggyback reservoir, in the seat tube. It also gets Scott's track lock remote, ABS braking on the top end models, and built-in seat stay lights. The Patron is available in 6 different models. There are 3 of the 900 series, which feature a 150mm fork, and 3 ST bikes, which get a 170mm fork, and the lowest tier of each uses an alloy frame. Prices start at €6,000 or around $6,400, with bike weights hovering around 54 pounds or 24.5 kilograms for the carbon bikes. Now, I can't help but look at that conservative geometry, the integrated lights on the seat stays, and the large Bosch kiosk display, and think that this might be an e-mountain bike that's designed for non-mountain bikers. Don't get me wrong, it's certainly trail-worthy, and I'm sure plenty fun in the right terrain, but many of the design decisions here seem to be more targeted at your average bike commuter than an avid mountain biker. Next, let's move on to some industry gossip, and there was a lot of it this last week. The biggest story is probably Tom Pidcock leaving Ineos Grenadiers 2 years ahead of his original contract end date and signing with Q36.5. This new 3-year deal will have Pidcock racing a Scott, which means he should have all the goods he needs for both road and XC racing should he continue to pursue both paths into the future. While we're on the subject of bikes, I can't help but feel bad for Pinarello, who have lost both of their XC Olympic gold medalists in just the last few months. In other news, it genuinely breaks my heart to have to tell you that yet another team has dropped out of the 2025 UCI World Cup Downhill Racing Series, and that is Transition Factory Racing. In a recent social media post, TFR says the reason for this is, quote, structural and organizational changes in the World Cup Downhill Series that are out of our control. Said changes were released to the public by the UCI this past October, and since then we've seen a couple other teams also choose to pull out of World Cup Downhill. And I can't help but think that this is kind of similar to what we saw happen in professional enduro racing last fall. We, of course, wish all the former Transition Factory Racing riders all the best as they look to find a new seat for the coming season. One last bit of racing news that came out last week is that Crankworx has decided to completely cut Speed and Style out of their Crankworx World Tour. I realize that I may be quite literally the only fan that's sad to see it go, but I did genuinely enjoy watching the interdisciplinary racing and the wide array of bikes riders brought to the event. That said, Crankworx is also teasing a new mystery discipline that will be starting off at the first stop in the series in Cairns later this spring. According to the press release, Crankworx says that this new event will be adding an exciting and uniquely tailored challenge for multidisciplinary athletes. I'm personally hoping to see Fixie 4Cross make its long-awaited professional debut. Moving from racing to retail, and one story that all of us here at 99 Spokes were super excited to hear about is that pre-owned e-bike dealer Upway has partnered and joined forces with Rad Power Bikes to offer in-person trade-ins. How does it work? Well, simply bring your pre-loved e-bike into one of 8 different Rad retail stores, and then the folks there will use Upway's real-time price estimator to give you the price for your bike either as a trade-in or for a non-layaway sale. Your old bike will then be shipped to one of Upway's refurbishing warehouses where it'll go through their full overhaul before being sold again with a 1-year warranty. This sounds to us like a pretty awesome collaboration and will definitely make upgrading your e-bike that much easier. We've got one more piece of industry gossip for you, and for this one, we're going deep into the rumor mill, because a couple days ago, there were some blurry photos of a new Colnago leaked onto the Weight Weenies forum. The bike, which would seemingly fill Colnago's current gap of an Aero race bike, is a far cry from any of their current bikes. This left more than a couple people wondering if these blurry renderings were nothing more than an engineering student trolling the bike industry. But the idea of some kind of new Colnago bike was definitely legitimized when Colnago, on their own social media account, teased some photos that don't show much outside of a pretty slippery looking Y-shaped cockpit and a single hashtag in the description, built to defy wind. Ironically, on that same post, Colnago announced that this bike will be revealed on December 9th, which just so happens to be that this video will be going live on YouTube. So there's a very good chance that right now, in this very moment, you know more about this bike than I do. Regardless, we're excited to feature whatever that bike is in next week's Weekly Rewind. Moving on then from the hypothetical to the oh so real, because it's time for shop talk, where we ironically step outside of the shop and tell you a little bit more about either one of our personal bikes, or in this case, a bike that we have coming up for a review. This is the Canyon Spectral ONfly Collective Edition. I've been riding this 150mm lightweight E-MTB for a couple months now, and my overall takeaway is just how organic an e-bike can feel. The TQ HPR50 motor definitely isn't the most powerful thing on the market, but its low weight and natural ramp up does a great job of subtly amplifying your own effort, not replacing it. My only complaints so far have been the relatively limited battery range and the very stretched out geometry that I'm personally not a huge fan of. The review for this bike is going to be dropping this coming Friday, so 4 days from when this is posted, and if you're watching it later, I'll have it linked somewhere up here. So be sure to subscribe to the 99 Spokes channel to make sure you don't miss that. Moving on now to one of my favorite parts of the weekly rewind, where I get to answer some of your viewer submitted questions that you can either leave in the comments of this video or send via message on Instagram. Up first, we have a question from one of our YouTube subscribers at 97dcreations96, and they're wondering what some of the differences in pros and cons are between direct-to-consumer and traditional business-to-consumer bike brands. The way that I like to conceptualize the difference is where you prioritize your money or your value going into the bike. If that looks like high-quality components for a lower price, then the lower prices coming from a direct-to-consumer company who cuts out the middleman retailer is likely going to be your better option. If, on the other hand, you value the support from a wide network of local bike shops that know the ins and outs of your bike and how to support you with replacement parts or warranty issues, then a traditional retail brand is the way to go. There are, of course, some exceptions. For example, brands like Marin and Giant often rival the prices of direct-to-consumer companies, and Canyon, one of the biggest direct-to-consumer brands, recently partnered with REI to give bike owners a place to get help with bike or warranty issues. Sadly, there is a lot of drama and strife that can sometimes go into this question. Some folks think that direct-to-consumer brands are somehow inferior or less than their more traditional retail counterparts. Personally, here at 99 Spokes, we don't buy into that at all. Again, it just comes down to where you prioritize your money going. So hopefully that helps. Our next question, once again, comes from a comment from last week's Weekly Rewind, and this is YouTuber at Eddie Parker. They've noticed that a lot of lower-end mountain bikes are opting for Shimano drivetrains, with SRAM being reserved for more higher-end models, and want to know if we've seen this trend more universally across the industry. In short, I'd say yes. Shimano Dior, and now Q's, has long been praised for its smooth and reliable shifting at a low price. Most folks consider it to be better than SRAM's SX or NX. We actually did a budget drivetrain shootout last year that I'll link here if you want to hear our thoughts on how they each felt on the trail. As for the higher end stuff, SRAM's wireless T-type drivetrains definitely have a leg up on anything Shimano has out right now, and with more and more companies releasing wireless-only frames, SRAM has a bit of a monopoly. But we, like pretty much everyone else in the bike industry, thinks it's only a matter of time before Shimano releases its own direct mount wireless drivetrain. Of course, when that happens, we'll have to have this conversation all over again. Our last question comes from Instagram user at Robin Lund, I think, and they want to know where the 99 Spokes name came from. And that's a great question. I actually asked the same thing when I got hired here to do social media about 1.5 years ago. I wish I could give you a deep philosophical answer, but the truth is, Scott and Brian just thought it sounded cool and the domain name was available, so they went for it. We like to end every episode of the Weekly Rewind with something that got us stoked that we hope will do the same for you. This time around, we're leaning deep into our all the bikes motto with some good old-fashioned BMX. I've been a BMX fan for basically all my life, but even I can get a little lost trying to follow the hyper-technical new school street riding. But this edit from Trespassing BMX couldn't be more different. Nothing but smooth, classic riding on some super unique spots. It's the kind of video that inspires me, and hopefully you too, to simply get out there and have fun on your bike, regardless of what that looks like for you. Thanks as always for tuning in to the Weekly Rewind. If you haven't done so already, I'd appreciate it if you just hit that like button, as well as subscribe to the 99 Spokes channel. And as always, remember that bikes are for everyone. Have fun out there.